Dear students, welcome to this lecture. Today, our topic of deliberation is guilds, function and role. Before we discuss about the today's topic, let me briefly introduce you to the main objectives of this lecture. To know about the role and functioning of the guilds, to know about the structure of the guilds, to know about the guild laws, to know about the craft hereditary, and finally, to know about the impact of guilds. Let's first start with the introduction. Although the organization and functions of guilds varied greatly across the areas and across time, certain generalizations are possible. Guilds during ancient India could be classified into craft guilds and merchant guilds. Craft guilds were made up of craftsmen and artisans in the same occupation, such as carpenters, bakers, blacksmiths, weavers, and masons. Many craft guilds came about because the growing population in the cities and towns led to increase in specialization and division of labor. Merchant guilds included mostly or all merchants in a town or city and were involved in regional and long distance trade. Merchant guilds were also influential in local governments, and many leaders of merchant guilds were wealthy and influential citizens. The functions of craft guilds and merchant guilds sometimes overlapped when merchant guilds opened shops or craft guilds engaged in trade. Guilds existed in rural areas also, and these were often established largely for social and religious purposes. The development in agriculture and other sectors of economy with the passage of time paved the way for more specialization of craft. Some towns were specially known for excellence in certain crafts, for example, Mathura and Kashi for their cloth. Certain villages were named after particular crafts or occupations, such as villages variously of smiths, carpenters, flowers, hunters, etc. Within a town, there are references to separate streets or localities of ivory workers, perfumers, florists, cooks, washermen, weavers, lot sellers, etc. Kautilya prescribes allotment of different quarters and streets to the followers of different crafts and even to merchants dealing with different merchandise. Localization helped consumers in making purchases, the state in administering laws relating to craftsmen and in tax collection, and guilds in evolving their conventions and usage in administering their affairs. Children of people following the same craft, staying together, learned their family craft without much effort. The segregation of people following one particular craft from another created narrow mindedness and isolation and contributed to greater bonds among members and also to the formation of castes and subcastes in different parts of the country. However, guilds could migrate from one place to the other. The texts refer to migration of the carpenters of a village even after receiving advances. They failed to fulfill their commitment of manufacturing articles. As I was already talking about the hereditary nature of the guilds, so let me now discuss about the hereditary nature of professions and how they contribute in the making of the guilds. The Jataka stories frequently refer to a son following the craft of his father. Often Kulla and Putta occur as suffix to craft names, the former indicating that the whole family adopted a particular craft and the latter that the son followed the craft of his father. This ensured regular trained manpower and created more specialization. The hereditary nature of profession in Indian guilds make them different from the European guilds of the Middle Ages, whose membership was invariably based on the choice of an individual. It may, however, be pointed out that adopting a family profession was more common with the members of craftsmen's guilds than with members of trader guilds. Now, we'll be talking about guild laws. Guilds had their own laws based on customs and usage regarding organization, production, fixation of price of commodities, etc. These rules were generally recognized by the state. The laws were a safeguard against state oppression and interference in guild affairs. The Gautama Dharma Sutra enjoins upon the king to consult guild representatives while dealing with matters concerning guilds. In Kautilya's scheme, an official in charge of accounts was to keep a record of the customs and transactions of corporations. According to him, in cooperative ventures, profits should be divided among members either equally or according to pre-agreement. Mono enjoins that a guild member who breaks an agreement must be banished from the realm by the king. According to Yajnavalkya, profits and losses were to be shared by the members in proportion. This practice assumes significance as it was in contrast to the rights and privileges enjoyed by people determined on the basis of their birth in a particular Varna. According to the Mahabharata, for breach of guild laws, there was no compensation. Yajnavalkya prescribes severe punishment for one who embezzles guild property. According to him, one who does not deposit in the joint fund money obtained for the corporation was to pay 11 times the sum by way of penalty. The guild rules helped in smooth functioning of the guilds and in creating greater bonds of unity among guild members. In course of time, the stats of the guild laws underwent change. In the Gautama Dharma Sutra and Manu Smriti, guild laws appear as moral codes, but in the Yajnavalkya Smriti, they are treated almost unbreakable. And as already discussed in the previous lecture, that from the post-Mauryan period onwards, because of the political instability and greater role of the guilds, they had become more powerful. That's why the law books of the period advises the king not only to pay respect but to obey these guilds, which speak about a greater role and functioning of the guilds. We also come across the system of apprenticeship by which the young trainees were attached to master craftsmen in various guilds. Yajnavalkya was the first to refer to industrial apprenticeship. However, the subject has been treated later elaborately by Narda. The parents or guardians of the pupil entered into an agreement as regards the duration of apprenticeship beforehand, and this was adhered to. Epigraphic evidences show that both Gomtika, the sculptor of the Prakham Yaksha, and Naka, who manufactured the statue of Yakshini, Lavya, were disciples of Kunika, though it was natural for the pupil to follow the style of his preceptor, yet one with an innovative mind could introduce new trends. In ancient India, the credit of successful training of craftsmen, so vital for the development of arts and crafts, goes largely to the guilds. Now, we'll be talking about guild structure. The guild was a compact organization. It had three components: the General Assembly, the executive officers, and the alderman, each with its well defined sphere of jurisdiction and so placed as not to determine or create hurdles in the functioning of the other. So, let me first talk about the General Assembly. No information is available in the text of the period under review about such formalities as undergoing an ordeal or securing a guarantee of good character or written agreement which find mention in the Brahaspati Samhita, which is a 6th century AD text for admission in the guild. Jataka stories give round figures 100, 500, 1000 as members of different guilds. There is a reference to 1000 carpenters of a locality, Varanasi, under two heads. This could be because the number was considered large enough to make the guild unwieldy, though it may be pointed out that a few references to 1000 members of a guild without division do occur. But more likely, it was due to bickering within the guild, a reference to the Buddha's bringing about reconciliation between quarreling guild chiefs and the state appointing Bandagarika for settling guild disputes indicate that bickering within guilds would not have been infrequent. However, it is also possible that the two chiefs, though heading 500 members each, still remained part of the same guild. The Nasik inscription of the time of Nahapanna refers to two weaver guilds at Govardhana, that is Nasik. Either one guild branched off into two because of feuds, or the creation of two guilds was deemed necessarily because of the large number of weavers there, or one of the guild have migrated to that place from outside. The next we have guild head. The head of a guild is often referred to as the Jataka or Pamuka in early Buddhist literature. Often he is referred to after the occupation followed by the guild of which he was the head. For example, the head of garland makers, head of carpenters guild, etc. Caravan merchants were guided by their leader who instructed them regarding halting, watering, etc., and measures to be taken to safeguard against robbers, etc. Sethis were merchants cum bankers and often headed merchant guilds. They were big businessmen in cities and also held landed properties in villages and played an important role in both rural and urban economy. Often the chief sethi of the city was named after that city. Normally, the head city of a city would be from among the cities of that city. But curiously, there is an instance of appointment to that office of one not only from outside the town but also outside the kingdom. At the request of Prasenjit, king of Kosala, Bimbisara, king of Magad, sent one Dhanajaya Badriya to hold the office of Nagara Sirasti of Sikhet, the Kosalian capital. Cities are often referred to as present in the king's court mainly for protecting interest of their guilds. The mention of Sithi Thana, office of the city, may indicate that he also held an office in king's court. As pointed out by Fick in Jataka's stories, he is referred to as taking leave of the king before journey or as seeking permission for resigning the office or for turning an ascetic or for distributing his wealth in charity. A Jataka text mentions a city as a king's favorite. There are frequent references to the great wealth of the Sethis. They were present in all important royal ceremonies and events of the state and were consulted by the king. The guild head could punish a guilty member even to the extent of excommunication, and the king approved it if he found that the punishment had been justly meted out. Ancient texts do not specify whether the office of the head of a guild was elective or hereditary. There are references to a mariner and a sitha being succeeded by their sons. A headsmith was succeeded by his son-in-law as also a sethi. It appears that normally headship of a guild went to the eldest son, and in the absence of a son to some close relation, provided that the person to succeed was himself an expert in the trade or craft, and the guild assembly as a routine would confirm such successions. Succession is mentioned only after the death of the head and not in his lifetime, which would suggest that the head remains in office lifelong. This is also supported by the evidence of two Damodarpura copper plate inscriptions of the 5th century AD taken together. It shows that one, Ribupala, held the office of Nagara Sirasti for almost half a century. Next, we have the executive officers. To assist the guild head and to look after the day-to-day business of the guild, executive officers came to be appointed. The earliest reference to executive officers is met with in the Yajnavalkya Simriti. Their number varied according to need and circumstances. Yajnavalkya says that they should be pure, free from greed, and should have the knowledge of the Vedas. The last mentioned qualification suggests the presence of Brahmanas in the executive council of these guilds. It is not specially stated whether the executive officers were elected by the assembly or were nominated by the guild head. Now let's discuss about some other aspects of the guilds. The guilds had their own offices, structures depicted on some nigama ceilings from Rajghat, perhaps representing guild office buildings. The house in the foundation of which a Nigama ceiling was found at Beta has been identified as House of the Guild. The bottomless chamber at Vishali, in which 273 seals of the Gupta period have been found, was perhaps a refuge room of a guild office. The Harivamsa Purana refers to separate pavilions earmarked for the members of different guilds to witness wrestling sessions, each marked by banners bearing the emblem of the guild. There were checks and balances in the functioning of the guilds. The members had the right to speak in the guild assembly, but a speech that was not sensible or that created hurdles in the functioning of a guild was punishable. The heads had considerable power over guild members, but they had to work within the framework of the usage and customs of the guild. Wrongdoings of guild rules made them liable to punishment at the hands of the General Assembly. The reference in a Jataka story to a guild head offering the hand of his daughter to the bridegroom before the guild assembly indicates his regard for that body. A member harassed by a headman could seek redressal from king. Now, let's talk about the functions of the guilds. The guilds remained almost autonomous in their internal organization. These laws were generally drafted by a large body, the corporation of guilds, of which each guild was a member. The corporation elected a certain number of advisors and they were its main functionaries. Guilds also served as local banks and trustees of religious endowments. People kept deposit of money with guilds with a promise that the interest accrued from there was to be devoted to specific purposes every year so long as the sun and the moon endure. The guilds fixed rules of work, quality, price, and distribution of finished products. Goods manufactured in the country were stamped at the places of manufacture. The imported ones were stamped at the toll gates. Any fraudulency with regard to weighing and measuring a commodity was severely punished by the state. Similarly, gaining of more than the specified profit was considered a punishable offense. Business community of this period had a highly developed sense of business administration. A passage in Digha Nikaya states, "The wise and the moral man shines like a fire on a hilltop, making money like the bee, which does not hurt the flowers. Such a man makes his pile as an anthill gradually. The man growing wealth thus can help his family and firmly bond his friends to himself. He should divide his money into 4 parts. On one part he should live, with 2 expand his business, and the 4th he should save for the rainy days." Guilds guaranteed the conduct of its members. Members of a guild were protected against injury and theft. If a craftsman was hurt, the person responsible was put to death. The one who stole articles of an artisan was heavily fined. There were equally strict rules against deception by artisans. Artisans indulging in unlawful practices were not only punished but were also expelled from the guild. A guild had the force of law for its members, and this law or code of conduct was known as Shirni Dharma. A guild had power not only over the economy but also over the social lives of its members. It acted as the guardian of their widows, orphans, as their insurance against sickness. They acted as the centers of technical education. Knowledge of mining, metallurgy, weaving, dyeing, and carpentry was maintained and improved by the relevant guilds. Now, let's talk about the impact of the guilds. The corporate type spirit of the guild gave recognition and self respect to merchants and craftsmen which they would not have otherwise found. Gradually, guilds developed into the most important industrial bodies in their areas. Historians are of the view that on the whole they were remarkable institutions of ancient India. Establishment of guilds resulted in growth of industry. Membership of a guild provided status and security to an artisan. Guild heads, Shresthanis, emerged as a class of highly respected people who controlled and financed trade on individual or partnership basis. These Shresthanis, while working as a joint stock company, contributed money and commodities to business. Growth of guilds led to expansion of towns. Members of guild lived and worked together in a particular section of the town and generally had such a close kinship relationship that they came to regard as a subcaste. In most cases, sons followed the same profession as the father, so the hereditary principle was adhered to. The guilds had a good supply of artisans. The children of a caste or subcaste followed same trade and this led to achievement of perfection. Thus, guilds had a regular number through generations. The growing trade of the ages led to the rise of a strong mercantile. The state created infrastructure to facilitate growth of business. New trade routes were opened for domestic and foreign business. The main trade routes were along the Ganges river itself from Rajgraha as far as Kosambi near present day Prayagraj, and then via Ujjain to Bhuj, the chief port for overseas trade with the West, and from Kosambi up to the Ganges Valley and across the Punjab to the Taxila, the outlet for the overland western trade. Eastwards, the trade went through the Ganges Delta to the coast of northern Burma and south along the east coast of India. To conclude, we can say the guilds in this way were responsible for organizing traders and craftsmen. The principles of management which we generally attribute to the Western management thinkers were already practiced in ancient Indian guilds. Guilds worked on the concept of hierarchy, organization, division of labor, specialization, quality control, rules and regulations, labor welfare, proper distribution system, advertisement, etc. They were perhaps the first powerful democratic business institutions of the world. They organized the resources of production, gave employment to many, and provided quality consumers. They protected the rights and welfare of workers and maintained and developed the skill of artisans. Guilds led to the expansion of domestic and foreign trade. This gave a boost to the economy and brought about prosperity of the people. Through payment of taxes, these guilds facilitated governments in creating infrastructures. Historians are of the view that the guild in ancient India was not merely the means for development of arts and crafts through autonomy and freedom accorded to it by the law of the land. It became a center of strength and abode of liberal culture and progress, which made it a power and ornament of the society. This is a matter of great pride that these ancient Indian corporate legal entities were much ahead of times and may have worked as model for present day corporate bodies. The kind of economic growth and development that we witnessed during the ancient period could not have been possible without the active role of these organizations. They did not confine their role to economy only, but had a profound impact on the cultural landscape as well. The contributions made by such organizations to a great extent were responsible in the making of some great monuments across the country. So, dear students, it was all about today's lecture regarding the function and role of guilds. Hope you have understood it well. Thank you